This is exercise number 11 in the Paint with Len short lesson series. This scene reminds me of the area of northwest Australia, and there we have many pretty purples and blues. We have ultramarine blue, cobalt violet, indigo, and I've mixed the colours a little bit. You see them broken up. They're very pretty colours. We start in the usual way. I'll put the undercoat on for the sky with a crisscross brush stroke and a long brush stroke at the bottom of the sky, and brush it well in. And this sky, I want to do it in indigo. Indigo is a colour that looks like grey, but it's not grey. It's actually a very dark blue. I believe it's Prussian blue with black mixed with it. So there is some blue in there. And we'll have a mono-coloured sky, just the indigo and white. I'm not going to pay a lot of attention for the sky. I just put it in and put it very dark in the corners. So you can paint your sky any colour you wish, but I'm using indigo. Then for horizon, because Australia has a red desert, I use crimson for the background horizon line. And this is the ground level. And I'll work some raw sienna into the bottom of it, and we'll work those two colours together. Plenty of raw sienna, that's a rather dark raw sienna I'm using there, and plenty of crimson, and brush them up and fill it in. And this is just the soil underneath the grass. We'll paint coloured grass over the top of this in a moment. Because where I'm working is quite hot, the paint dries, and I give it a bit of a squirt with a spray can of water. That works really well. You'll notice the paint goes on a lot quicker when you wet it. If you're working in oils, you won't have this problem, but you do need to thin your paint when you're working in oils. We'll create a pretty straight horizon line there, and with our blue, that's ultramarine blue, I'll run in the area that'll be the mountains, and we can lighten this with our white. So concentrate on the top line of your mountain and bring them along like a plateau, and then they drop down a little bit and then they fall into the valleys or onto the plains. And keep your mountains all the same shape. Put plenty of white in the bottom. The paler you can get them, the further away they'll look. So that's ultramarine blue and white, but it would have a little bit of crimson in it because there was crimson on my brush. There's that side cliff, and then it falls away like this. All this area must have been made by water. It's broken through the top layer and then washed away the soil. And where the plateaus are, that's where it hasn't broken through. Keep the mountain tops reasonably level. As they come towards you, they can raise higher up into the sky, and keep that slope on the edge. Concentrate on the top and then colour in underneath. And across the other side, the same thing. Same height. Drop it down. Oh, we better have one in here. Might as well have an intermediate mountain in the background there. And of course that one isn't quite so dark as the foreground one. So fill it in with your blue. There's a little bit of crimson in there, not much. And the white coming from the bottom. Tone it down with the white. Now again, that slope, that very pleasant slope. You see that slope? It's a very pleasant slope. Try and practice that. I'll put some violet in here and a bit of white over the top because that violet tint. There's amazing colours in the Australian outback. The violets and the blues. And over here, I'll block this one in with pure violet. There is other colours on my brush. There's a bit of crimson, a bit of blue in there. And then I'll give the shape a little bit of character with a few strokes of blue. Make sure you keep these brush strokes in the right direction. Don't copy my brush strokes exactly. Just do as I do with your own brush strokes. Clean my brush underneath. And I'll define this along the top here because this mountain range is slightly closer to us. You notice it's a little bit higher, and you would be able to see the trees, just a hint of trees on the mountain range. There's not a lot of trees. Now I've got a scruffy big old brush here, and I've loaded it with Indian yellow and white, and I'm looking for the furthest distance of flat land back there, and dab, 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 dab. That'll give us our distant plains. Dab, dab, dab right across. Try and keep these lines horizontal, straight across, backwards and forwards, and that'll give you the very flat effect. Dab, 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 dab. And if you make a mistake, don't worry, we'll go back and fix it up later. Now these dabs are getting bigger as they come towards us because the grass is much bigger. So I'm pushing the brush on harder. I have loaded my brush 3 or 4 times now doing this. So you will need to load your brush, clean it and load it several times. Dab, 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 dab. And here in the foreground we have big dabs, not many dabs across there. About 10 or 12 dabs across the front. The background isn't bright enough, so I've reloaded the brush with the Indian yellow and much more white, and that'll give us a brighter background. No problem, and I'll zigzag it towards us. It looked like there's a little bit of shape there, right across under the mountain, and then zigzag it to keep the eye coming into the picture. Keep the middle of your picture brighter than the outsides. Don't go too much out here with the bright. There, that's our grass finished. Now with my little round brush, loaded with a dark, there's burnt umber on the brush, we'll paint in the little trees in the distance. These needn't be very big, just little tiny trees. And if you're careful, you'll be able to get them in with one brush stroke. Just put them on. If you make a mess of them, don't worry, we'll fix them up later. We can always put bigger trees over the top of them. So lots of little trees, and don't space them equal distance apart, trying to get all different spaces and all slightly different sizes. Now we'll come in with our bigger trees. When you put these in, hold your brush with 2 fingers and you'll be able to twiddle the brush and get them in easy. Now I've thinned this paint out a little bit, so it's coming off my brush rather well. And across the other side. It's not hard to put these in if you twiddle your brush. If you hold the brush with 2 fingers and twiddle it around and lift it off to get the finer tip on the end of the branches. Be careful where you put these trees. Don't have them crossing any intersections. You see here, I just missed that intersection of the 2 mountains. That's okay. But if you put it through the intersection, you destroy that little bit of the painting. And of course the trees get much bigger as they come towards us. Actually, trees in a desert like this should fan out a bit more umbrella shape. So we'll do that when we put the foliage on. Bit of shadow, bit of dark under the trees. Let's have a twig down here. Now for the foliage, I'm using warm yellow. I've put a little bit of viridian green in there to give it a green tint, but not too much. And a little bit of the grey, that was a bit of the indigo I put in for just a tint to keep it back in the distance a bit, not too bright. And then we mix all our darks together, just whatever dark colours you have, put them all together and that'll be our darks. It doesn't matter what colour it is. Don't mix your colours completely. Load your brush with dark on one side, light on the other, and then we can dab, 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 dab our umbrella shapes. Be careful again where you put them. Don't destroy your mountains. Dab, 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 and get this umbrella shape. You can have definite umbrella shapes here on the outback trees. Keep them dark. This area, this foliage, needs to be much darker, much more vibrant than the background. And then it'll come forward and you give it a good 3-dimensional look. I'll dab a few little trees in the background there. My brush is working rather well. This is a size 12 round hog bristle brush, and it's not an expensive brush, just an ordinary hog bristle brush. Now let's put the white on the branches. This always looks good. In the outback, some of these whites are brilliant white running up the trees. And a few bits and pieces in the background. You can do this with a knife. You can get a good effect by just using the tip of the knife dipped in a bit of white paint. You can get the brilliant white line, and if you're careful you can curve it around the trees. We'll have a few white lines here and there coming into the picture, and the horizontal white line in the distance will attract your eye into the far distance. A little bit of highlight on our branches, and there we have an outback Australia scene. My sky is not as good as it could be. You might do a better job on your sky.